Great fucking track. Hey, apparently we're live. G'day, this is the Art of Rock. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the Tonga people as being the traditional landowners of where I am, which is Hollywood, California. The Art of Rock bombastically bombasticizes every Saturday. We talk about art, writer's block, music, all that fun shit. We do this on Angelspit's Twitter and YouTube every Saturday morning. It's there. Hey, while I'm here, can I actually turn on that one there? Let's see if that works. This is made possible with Angelspit's Patreon. I'm joined by several members now. Thank you so much. And you can join for free. And by the way, I'm starting to upload images and behind the scenes stuff of the new Angelspit photo shoot, which is going to give me a nervous breakdown. But hey, fuck it. And if you don't want to do the Patreon thing, you can do the Bandcamp thing. Just FYI, Bandcamp is taking more money out of what you give in because Bandcamp are a bunch of cunts. Fuck them. The Industrial Incisionist playlist is amazing. If you want to find some new amazing music, it's right there. And every Wednesday night, deep dive. Fucking synthesizers on Vulture Culture. Wearing the t-shirt. He just did the Rob's bloody synth. It was great. And the a really interesting point he brought up this week about the way that vintage synths are increasing in price. It's better to buy a vintage synth than a lot of government bonds and shares because they're going. Did you fucking see that? That's crazy. Non-stop music from the bleeding edge is MTV TV. Once we're done here, we're gonna fang on over there. G'day, Adapt Manipulate. We're going to fang on over there. It's there. I just don't know what the hell else I'm supposed to be talking about right now. Indivisible is really amazing. If you're concerned the way America is headed, go there. If you're using too much media, get yourself some bloody Media Anonymous stuff. Rezi, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. It's good to see you. Good morning.
Rezi's sick, so these cameras off. Today we are also hopefully going to be joined by Alex. Brett is already here, who's AKA the Demon. Hey, Ivan's here. Go listen to these people's music. It's bloody great. Now I've got the vinyl in my head. Brett, I mean, Rob, I need your fucking bloody thing. We were talking about your link. Give me your link. Put your link in the description, in the thing, so I can copy and paste it. Hey, so here we go. Boom. My mate Sean. Da, 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 da. My mate Sean has asked me this really great question this week, which is, do you have any advice or articles or examples of how to start a collective? Starting a collective. Wow. So I want to throw it open because I think a lot of us have been involved in collectives. And there's so many who, what, where, when, whys with the collectives. Since I've started a lot of my collectives, everything has changed. Culture, human nature itself has changed. Yet I think that having a collective now is more important than ever because it is a really helpful thing to combat loneliness. Loneliness is now a bigger threat on society than cancer. That study just came out. So I'm going to throw the floor open to having a collective, what your thoughts of it are. Let's go. Brett, talk to me.
I would say that I've never formed one, but, well, I've never intentionally formed one. How's that? For me, it's always been kind of accidental, meaning, you know, I would, with one exception, when my first garage band, we needed a bassist. These were people I were at high school with, so the collective was already kind of there, right? But none of us played bass and we were a tiny little school, so we actually had to reach out. In that regard, we went through the local music shop, which, you know, that's what we did. You know, people got lessons there. They bought CDs, instruments, all the whole gig. And it's really kind of been one that from that, it's like, okay, you know, this friend knows this friend, this friend knows this friend. And it's been more accidental than purposeful. And, you know, and I would say that, you know, even with like me in Art of Rock here, you know, part of that came because, you know, Carl, you needed your computer fixed one day, and I was a fan, and I saw your message, and I'm like, dude, I've been doing this since I was a kid. Yeah, I can help. Um, so I'm not really strong on being that person to say, here's how you form one. I can kind of answer more to generally don't be a dick, and that will allow it to continue.
Thank you. I'm going to go on a rant. Thanks for that. I still think collectives are incredibly important. We kind of have a collective here. Like if somebody puts out an album or a release or something, everybody's going to help each other. Sean is asking the questions also about encouragement for getting people to get started. Exactly like what Brett said, don't be a dick. Because even if you're talking to somebody who's never released something and somebody else has released 3 albums, both people have got stuff to share. And the person who is more experienced has got a lot to learn from that person who hasn't released anything. Never think there's any form of hierarchical, because this is about life experience, man. Whether you put release music or not, yes, it is incredibly important, but still what you have to bring to the table as somebody who's never released music is very, very important. And it's an important perspective. As I have said so many times, that Angelspit's sound has completely changed, and the production and everything has changed because of Art of Rock. And I thank you again. My first question is why? What is it you're trying to get out of a collective? And you need to think about that, because what you want to get out of it and what somebody else might want to get out of it might be completely different. It's really interesting in this time, in this really bizarre time that we are living in right now. I think there is so much confusion. Let me rephrase that. There is so much confusion about what you're supposed to be doing, what the creative process looks like, blah, 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 blah. So you go, well, I haven't released my music, or I'm having trouble getting seen or getting heard. You know, the ways around that, and like I don't know where that's going. I think the most important thing is who you pull in. I don't think doing a canvas call is a very good idea. I think you need to be pulling people in who you know, who you trust, and then they pull in people who they know and they trust. Because I'm telling you, man, if you're working on a really basic idea and you don't have a lot of confidence, I don't have a lot of confidence, you'll never hear a demo from me because I have no confidence. And then somebody says something smart ass about it, I will throw that song in the bin, because they are going to, all the terrible negativity in my head, they are going to come in and say, yep, it's got a voice. You should be thinking that your music's shit. Stop it now. I can't risk doing that because I'm so fucking hung up, paranoid, and insecure. But you have to trust these people. Should there be ground rules? Probably. And like Brett said, don't be a cunt. That's it. Trying to have a Zoom session or something where everybody gets together once a week or once a month or something. For example, there's Stretch Metal, which is a collective where you can pay to be a part of it. And if you are a part of their membership, you can be a part of the Zoom sessions, etc. With the Art of Rock, you do not have to be a member of the Patreon. All you have to do is email me and say, can I get on board? It's like, fuck yeah, of course you can. Communication is really important. Getting to trust each other and getting to trust each other's vulnerabilities is really important. The real big question is, like, I think the most important currency is encouragement. Because, you know, if you all end up saying, oh, we're going to put together a playlist on Spotify or whatever, that's great. Then come together and for the love of fuck, promote it. My problem with collectives has always been that I am the guy who ends up hauling everything along. And that's really beaten the inspiration out of the whole concept for me. Um, so yeah. So anyway, that's where I start. Why are you doing this? How are you doing this? Where and when are you doing this? And who are you pulling into it? That's my questions that I'd be asking you. And also be aware that there's probably a whole bunch of collectives in the industrial link. Like look up Sounds and Shadows and ask them like, hey, are there any industrial coalitions or collectives that I could be a part of? Don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just jump on board. I'm going to shut up. Ivan, I'd love to hear what you have to think about this.
Yeah, back in the early 90s, the house in South Milwaukee, we ran what or became what we often refer to as the commune days. Because for a while there, we probably had in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 people living in the house. And, it was the early 90s, like jobs for people our age sucked if they were even available. It was a horrible damn mess. And, getting together and, having a support network made a difference. But those systems only work as well as everybody does their part. As soon as somebody stops doing their part, they become like this, just like lead weight everybody else has to carry along with them. And, and worse yet, that often increases the number of members that are a lead weight that needs to be carried. And so, usually the destruction of these systems involves people stopping really doing their part to keep it going. But when it worked, it was freaking, it really made a difference. And I'm pretty sure that in the music scene, collectives of similar musicians with similar ideas supporting each other and pushing everyone forward is a pretty good goal. But it, again, is going to take everybody actually doing their part fully.
Kind of like a band or a marriage or a friendship. It's kind of like a friendship. Thanks, mate. Hey, Rezi, I want to hear your thoughts.
I think it's really difficult to force a group into existence if you're not the type of person that does that. Um, and there are types of people that do that. And there are people that like to join and contribute, and there's people that like to run the infrastructure, and there's people that have it's like society almost, where you have these skills and differences and things that you can contribute. But I think, Carl, if I caught the end of what you were saying, there's this big question: why? Like, why? If you just want to learn, maybe. If you just want to contribute, maybe. But if you just lack a certain sense of camaraderie or group cohesion, there's a lot of reasons. But the main best thing that it comes down to, from my limited years of experience, whatever you want to call it, is you have to have a genuine interest in what the other people are there for and what they're contributing. Because that's kind of the definition. I mean, if everybody's interested in the other party's work and personalities and contributions, then by definition, there's something to contribute and enjoy and get something out of and feed back to the group, right, Jojo? Jojo agrees. So overall, if you are not the type of person to start one of these things, there's, I don't really, you know what? I'm not personally. I've started bands over the years a couple of times. but collectives, not so much. The goal should be defined, though. If there's a clear goal and purpose, I think that is, I don't know about a recipe for success, but there's this better likelihood of people knowing what they're going to get out of it, being able to contribute properly, being able to benefit properly, that kind of thing. And the real practice is making the focus that common goal and realizing that you're there for the benefit of the common goal. And it helps sublimate ego to a greater extent. The things that I've been involved in that had a clear purpose and an evolving and changeable set of goals, but a clear ones, you can focus on that rather than your own bullshit, and rather than the bullshit interpersonally that can arise, because there's the goal, there's the outcome, there's the game, there's the album, there's the song, there's the improvement, there's the community.
Thank you, mate. Core word there, besides everything you said, was good rant, Razi. The core word, I reckon, was community. So thank you. Brett, tell me about your brain.
I'm going to reflect a lot of what has already been said. There's got to be a reason for a collective, but I'm a little bit looser with the definition, I guess. And it can be a group of friends, fans, whatever, because part of that is going to just make up a social aspect of it. With that said, that can't necessarily be the whole end goal. I mean, it can, but you really have to define what that goal is for yourself as to what you want it to be if you're going to form this thing. And I'll give you an example. If it's very difficult for me to let people into my project, The Demon Hate. It is a lot easier for me to instead form a new band and be like, look, everything we're putting on the table towards this goal is open season. And I can be a lot more forgiving that way. And part of that is like, look, you got to understand that me as a person needs this thing over here to balance me out. So being a collective means you're bringing those things that you can to the table, I think. And to that regard, you've got to be the person who is strong enough, I guess, to define your role in it. Otherwise, you're going to get sucked into everyone else's pull, and it's not going to feel right, and you're going to have problems with that. And it doesn't matter, this can be extrapolated across a lot of different subjects. And you hear bands, Carl here has talked many times, like, he doesn't want to work with people who are drunk and high. It's time to do the job. There are others who have the opposite flow, and well, we like Skinny Puppy, right? So again, somebody in that collective needs to kind of be the captain, or there needs to be a co-captain or something, because there's got to be that reason it exists, and then there's got to be that ability to allow everyone else to exist within it. And you got to be organized a little bit in that regard.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you. Rob, I need you to destroy my brain.
Impossible. Yes, so this is really about a community of interest, I guess. And the community of interest, it's all about where you share ideas together and how you share ideas together. So let's say you've all got a common intent or a common interest. He's lost his cat. If you share the same interest, then you're going to meet at the pub to watch a band that you all like, or that cat. If you're going to share information on that interest, you might publish a zine. So those are two different things. Like I can advertise a gig in a zine, and people will show up at the gig at the pub to watch that band. That's sharing the community of interest by having a zine that pulls people together. And then you're sharing. The people aspect is the sharing part. So getting together and enjoying a few, watching it, talking about it afterwards, meeting the band, that sort of stuff. And I think the difference there is if you're going to form a collective, you're probably going to be anonymous, because it's a little bit like creating a social media channel called the Deadheads. All the Deadheads are going to get together and talk about the Grateful Dead. Does the band run that social media group? No. It's the collective that contributes to the social media group. Who created it? No idea. Somebody. It's kind of anonymous and actually not important. But having that collective sharing of information on that Deadhead social media group is basically the essence of that collective. And yeah, it might be, you know, to take the words from Monty Python, the Holy Grail, it could be an autonomous collective where each month we all vote for a leader and we take turns at being a leader. And that would be just an admin. So think about being an admin on a Deadhead social media group. So somebody's going to take turns at being the moderator, if you like, or updating the events list of the Grateful Dead tour. And really, that's what that's all about. And you've got a social, outward-facing community where you share information, like on public social media. And then you've got a private group, like on DistroKid. It might be invite only. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve, really, with that collective or that community. But you know, back in the days of old, people would bang a drum by the fire, and people would come in from around the village and start dancing to that drum beat and chanting to that drum beat. That was participating in a collective, in a societal construct that somebody thought was a cool idea to bang on a drum. And then the sharing might have been, tomorrow we go up to the rock cave and we paint a picture of this drum type with this tuning frequency and this rhythm and musical notation. And this is the one song that we all love the most. We will play that song every Sunday or every Thursday night. So it's kind of about sharing together and then sharing information when you're not together. And, you know, if you've got a collective idea, maybe your role is just to plant a seed where you know there's already a huge collective. They just are missing the sharing part of it. They're missing the ability to share knowledge. Razi, you look perplexed and happy.
You know, I'm wondering what the difference between a casual bunch of people who happen to have something overlapping. I saw D mention the term just Venn diagram of interests. This may be a little bit different, but the formalization of a collective, where does the value start in that versus just knowing people? Is a nightclub where people listen to the same type of music as you a collective? Is the coffee hour after hours that you go to after the club a collective? Is the band that you form, I think we're going to say yes on this one, as a result of listening to that kind of music, a collective? Or are these more ad hoc with different purposes? Brett, go ahead.
I think it's yes. You know, but there's a certain amount of that requires, you know, regularity. You know, for example, the bar, that can be a collective. But if you're just, you know, showing up whenever the hell you show up and, you know, your friends are always there and it's cheers, maybe not. At the same time, it depends on what you do with it, you know? So I would take a look at other collectives, you know, take a look at religion for that matter. There's all sorts of meetup groups. There's, you know, prayer sessions. You know, I'm borrowing and trying to, you know, fit, you know, square pegs and round holes. But at the same time, what I'm saying is, I think, you know, it's that thing that a group of people agree to do on a regular basis that helps make that. And what you end up doing with that collective, comes back to the original goal of it existing at all.
Thank you, Brett. And thank you for taking over, Razi. I had a frank issue. Okay, so this is amazing. Thank you. Tenacity. In order for you to keep a collective going, because albums take time, albums take 18 months to 35 years. They take time. So you've also got to have that sort of tenacity with a collective, because you're building a relationship with people, and you might end up with a collective of 3 people and it could set the world on fire, whereas you've got a collective with 200 people and absolutely nothing fucking happens. Also, the more people you got, the more cats you're hurting. And this is bringing in the question of how much energy do you really want to expend on this? Like, yeah. Find groups that already exist. For example, I'm a part of an EMAX. It's more, they used to be a Yahoo group, but now they're on IO or something. And everybody comes together and talks about the EMAX. I've actually thought about maybe I want to start having a Sunday afternoon Zoom session with those guys where we sit around and talk about the fucking EMAX and exchange ideas and thoughts and samples and whatnot about the EMAX. That would be epic. Also, Vulture Culture is a great place to go too, because those chats on Wednesday nights, there's 50 to 100 people in there who are there and ready. I mean, yeah. Who are probably interested in doing it. Also remember that, yeah, are you prepared to expend the energy? There's a big question, and it seems to be, I have to be careful how I put this. What's in it for me? There's two different, I think there's distinctly 2 different kinds of people. One arc, because I'm a bastard. What's in it for me, people? And what can I bring to the group, people? Like, you're having a picnic, and what food, entertainment, etc. can I bring for the group? Shelter, etc. Rugs, blanket, compared to people who are, what food can I take from other people? And it's really funny that you go to a barbecue or something, and very rarely are there people who just turn up and eat. Usually people will bring something, if it's drinks or fucking whatever. It's the same concept with a collective, although I don't see that same thing very often with a collective. Like, people say they do, but it's the what's in it for me thing. Yeah. Jump on something that already exists. And then bring to it, add to it, encourage to it. There's also Stretch Metal, who is a noise / dark ambient / ambient / collective, whatever you want to call it, music that I'm totally into, that I'm a part of. Stretch Metal is also a tax deduction, so you can give money to them, and it's a 501c3 nonprofit. Don't fuck around with setting this thing up as a nonprofit. Just fucking don't. Yeah. So there you go. It's a relationship. It's a community. Bring fucking food and bring enough to share with other people. That's what I reckon. Does anybody else want to bring in, throw in anything else here? And if we were going to increase this to be more of a collective, I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on that. What would be involved in that? Here we have a whole bunch of people who get together to talk about music, and we do help each other out. What would we do if we wanted to increase this into a more collective thing? Rob, what are your thoughts?
If you've got enough momentum, then having a convention, even if it's a very small convention where people plan to get together and talk shit, they might bring their wares. You'd set an agenda for the event, you'd set a date, you would try to determined that there were no conflicts in your date selection, so you're not losing half the audience because Nine Inch Nails or Marilyn Manson's on tour that weekend, you know? Choose the dates and the agenda and the location accordingly and start small. Build a momentum, because the people that attend are your best marketing team. They're going to invite their friends next time, and you might say, "Oh, I haven't planned another one of these events." And they'll say, "Why not?" Well, you know, do you want to help? Like, don't own it all. Don't take leadership. Just let them build organically. So if you have a little mini convention, and have an agenda, don't go crazy with sponsorship or anything like that. Just make it really small. Go to a local community location, get together, spend, 3 hours tops sharing ideas, meeting each other face to face, and then let the community drive it forward. If everyone thinks it's a great idea to do that, let them decide. You don't have to own that shit. If it's gonna build organically, let it.
That's a really good point. I'm going to circle back to that. Thank you, Rob. Brett, what do you think?
So I'll admit I've kind of lost my way in that last question, but I remember what I was going to say, and I was gonna point everyone to, if you haven't watched Primus Searching for Another Drummer, I think they describe the concepts we're trying to do here pretty well in that series. And one of the techniques they did was everyone had to go out to eat, sit down and just BS outside of the studio, outside of the whatever. And what that whole thing about is, can we just communicate as people? Can do our personalities in this group, this collective, this thing, benefit each other? I mean, every now and then, everyone's going to rub everyone the wrong way, right? But can you build them back up?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Brett. I'm gonna echo the reading some comments. Thank you. Yeah, whatever happens organically, absolutely. Sean, don't force it. Just don't. And you got to match their energy. If people don't give a fuck, then don't give a fuck. And that brings in to my concern with, in this day and age, the whole concept of the collective, I feel, is disappearing. And I feel that the structure of what it is to be a human is being worn down, and the collective mindset and the village mindset, it's just being, I see it as evaporating. And I see people looking at things and going, this is just an option to me. It's not a, it's if it's not already built and made, then I don't care. But that's been my experience. I could be totally wrong. I have said in the past that it's really difficult to get a collective going in the United States. And I don't know how the Northwest Industrial Coalition did it back in the 90s. There is something about American culture, no offense, that makes it really difficult. Everybody is very, what about me? What's in it for me, me, orientated. Whereas I found that setting up collectives everywhere else in the world is easier because it is more of a collective communal mentality. But that may have changed because there's been massive changes in human culture in the last 20 years while I've been in the US. So if I went back to Australia tomorrow, maybe I couldn't start a collective. Maybe all of that's gone. Does anybody else want to jump in at this point? And that's not, incidentally, that's not a diss on American culture. That is a diss on, or observation on the culture that the world is becoming. And I'm seeing this in dating. I'm seeing it in friendships. I'm seeing it in so many different places. Yeah. Raziel, I see your hand.
Did we verge into the other subtopic of this about the sort of beginner joining a group of experts angle yet? I might have missed it.
We haven't, but let's jump in.
Um, it came to mind as we're talking about this is that the what is that thing that makes it from somebody coming in and just stepping in it versus somebody coming in and being genuinely welcome and like I don't know, everybody thinks that they have some amount of expertise at something, and if I think a new person to a group of people comes in and has interest, did some homework, understands where they're stepping in, and wants to know more. And maybe the flattery part of, I know something about you. Here's a specific question I'm going to ask you as an expert about your particular thing that you did. It's really hard to get a bad reaction about that and elicit a negative response. Like, I think my experience and on, I guess, both sides of that, like, just by dint of being old, you have some experience with something, but I have seen it work both ways. If somebody comes into a group without the boot up process having completed for them, they can ruffle feathers. Where on the other hand, if they come in having done just a little bit of, I know who you are, here's my actual questions, I'm engaged, I understand a little bit, and I don't know this, I mean, that's unimpeachable in so many ways. So I don't even know that it has to be a worry with just that little tiny flip of preparation or attitude or purpose.
Yeah, totally. Bro, what's your thoughts?
I think a new person coming into an existing band, is really fighting themselves. And it's really a confidence issue. At the end of the day, both have something to teach each other, typically speaking. Or everybody's learning, right? So if nobody knows anything and you saw a drummer, a bass, and a guitarist get together, but you can do vocals, then you're all at the same starting point, and it's maybe not as a big a deal. Then I think you run into the other side of things where you can kind of be starstruck. If you think this group or whatever has made it to such a degree that you've just been enamored with them for however long, there's an intimidation factor. It is intimidating. You want to live up to what your expectation of them is, and you've probably set that a bit higher than anyone's expectation really is. And all of these things are things that life just kind of teaches you as you go along, but it really kind of depends on where you are at in your own journey of that, how that's going to feel. And at the end of the day, don't be a dick. You'll probably do fine.
Yeah, thanks, man. Again, it's a reminder, don't be a dick. Thank you. Rob, what do you reckon?
I think there's an element of legitimacy. You've got to earn trust in the group, and you've got to bring value to the team. You've got to show that you're open to what already exists and not tread on toes. And I think what breaks bands up is a lack of shared social contract, where everyone has their role to play, but they know that anyone is still allowed to do X, Y, and Z. Like if I was to get on the drums and play a beat that I think we should play in this song that we're throwing together, I shouldn't be pushing the drummer's nose out of position by doing that. There should be an agreement that, okay, everyone's got their own piece of musical instrument that they're meant to be using, but when we're in the creation phase, you can pick up anything you want. You can pick up a trash can lid, you can pick up a microphone, whatever you want to throw ideas in the good idea basket, and no idea is a bad idea. That's got to be a social contract that you kind of agree together when you're kind of norming and storming as a band. If the emphasis shifts from the core original members over to the new member because they've got fresh ideas, there's a real danger that you can lose some core members because they will lose their self-esteem, or they'll feel like their value is not as important to the band leader as what it used to be. Even if they founded the band, they might feel left out because the new person is bringing in such new material or direction or insight that it's going in the wrong direction. You know, look at Roger Waters and Pink Floyd. There's no guarantees it's going to work. So what are the successful bands that have incorporated a new member? So I'm just thinking of AC/DC losing Bon Scott, a really good transition with Brian Johnson, and it held its ground. It wasn't the same. He wasn't Bon Scott, but it worked. And then you've got bands that have never had the same members of the band for more than 3.5 years. Like, they're just constantly evolving. There's some bands that have been out there for 30 years and every single musician has changed out of the band over and over again. It's weird. It's magic, but it works. And there's obviously a social contract there which breaks people out, perhaps, but it can easily welcome new members in to maintain that status quo of what the audience is looking for. I'll pause there.
Thank you. Really enjoying the comments. Thank you so much to everybody. Sean, it's good to see you, by the way. And I saw a new name here. Vint Synth Mark. Welcome. I hope you're still watching. Yeah, this is always a big issue, is the collective thing. I think it's also pointing at more than, it's a fascinating conversation because and it is fascinating because everybody's bringing with them their own thoughts and their own expectations of, you know, what's in a collective and what they want to get out of a collective and how much they want to push or not push. I mean, people are constantly talking about pigs with ego complexes. You know, that's probably me, because when other people aren't pulling with me, it's like I get very, very pissy. I don't know. I don't know. So, yeah, you know, we can't really make a summary of everything that's been said here because there's been so many different things that have been said, which is fantastic, which is really, really valuable. Razi, talk to me.
Humorously, on Rob was mentioning old bands that have long evolving Ship of Theseus like memberships. I was looking at Yes to see if there was how many points there were
Yes
where
came to
nobody. Yeah. Strangely, I mean, you'd guess, I mean, Chris Squire from the beginning most of the time until he died, of course. But interestingly, Alan White has one of the longer lines of everybody else as the drummer after Bill Bruford, and up until I just thought it was kind of odd. But yeah, that is a fun definition of a collective, when the spirit of the name of the thing lives on in some ways, despite the membership evolving out. It's a little bit odd. And I have to say, I wasn't terribly excited by the newer Yes stuff that I listened to, but it's a phenomenon. It happens. I don't know what that says about our actual discussion, but thanks for bringing up old bands anyway.
And any excuse to talk about Yes. And
I
also
know,
Alex,
it happens.
Alex mentioned Tangerine Dream as well. And
Good,
also
good, good.
almost Devo and almost Kraftwerk.
Nobody's mentioned Eno specifically yet, although
Well, Eno is like he's in the House of Thoth, where he just keeps reincarnating.
Eno is his own collective, really.
Yeah. Um, and Bowie was interestingly was hinting at passing it on to other people, which I thought was fucking amazing.
Don't you mean Bowie?
Yeah. Oh, who was I talking to this week who called him Bowie? And I taught them some new Australian swear words, really offensive ones.
Well, Brett got the Bowie going last week.
No, it was somebody else as well this week. Call it fucking Bowie. I got all shitty. I got
That's just
really
Rob
up
trying
in
to
the
throw me
air.
under the bus.
Yeah, bring up
Have at
that
it.
damage.
Have at
Um,
your.
So that's yeah. Look. So good luck. And we could use this as a collective if you want. I don't know what that means anymore. I don't know what you want in a collective, but we're here and we talk a bit beforehand and afterhand, and we're always shooting the shit and sharing our cats. And what else is there besides sharing a cat, really?
Dogs.
Yeah, and I'm trying not to talk about the EMAX, which I spent 3 hours programming this morning. I gotta tell you, EMAX break. It's an EMAX break. EMAX break. It's time to take an EMAX break. So I'm working on this new
What time were you awake this morning? Because I saw
4:30.
you. Yeah, I saw you posting on social media, and it was too early for East Coast time to be doing that sort of thing.
Yep, 4:30.
Crazy.
Because I was gonna do it last night, but I went, fuck it, I'm not. So I got up, 4:30 every morning, and it just blows my fucking mind. You got this song and you're working on the song, and I always put them in blip bloopy fucking soft synth crap sounds to make sure the bass line works and all that shit. And then I pull it onto the EMAX or whatever. But with the EMAX, it's like, fuck. Oh my God. It just changes everything because it's this beautiful, like I got this sound at the moment, which is inspired by the Vulture Culture thing about the EMAX, and I thought I need to build an EMAX library, and I grabbed these sounds, and they're all like smashing tins and scraping tins and all sorts of fun stuff. And I pitched it. Pitching an EMAX is a pain in the bum. Looping an EMAX is a pain in the bum. But we got this thing going on, and it's like far out. Nothing touches the awesomeness of this synthesizer. And it just totally changes the whole. This song is now creepy. It's creepy. There you go. That's the end of my story. Does anybody else want to talk about anything at all?
Sure, you
right
didn't
now?
sample a memory moog.
I do actually have Memory Moog samples. They're
Making
not
sure
as
that
good as
got
the
said.
Memory Moog. Yeah. I'm sorry, Raziel. Rob, fill me with your brain.
I'm just curious because I know that if you follow vulture culture, and you are a member of his something or other, then you'll be invited to watch his streams, his member streams of capturing analog synths into Omnisphere. And I'd be curious to know who has used Omnisphere extensively, and how does that compare, do you think, to using an old sampler? Whether it's Kurzweil or EMAX, because I've only just started using Omnisphere because I took my sweet ass time because it costs money. And there's a story behind that. And I thought it's actually really good and it's pretty easy to use. It is expensive, but I think it is very good value for money. And I'd be interested in people's opinions on what they think about using Omnisphere versus the ultra opposite, which is hardware analog retro sampling, which is awesome, but coming in with the very latest software, and is it good or is it bad? Because so far what I've mucked around with, it's actually pretty good. I'm not going to say it's replacing anything, but it's actually pretty good.
Jump on in. This is a great conversation. Thank you.
I've now been using it for about a year and a half or so, and I've used it on almost every single track, at least at some point. It is all right to sampling. I do sampling differently. I rarely throw samples into my synths. When I do, it's it's because I no longer want to recognize that sample, right? I want to turn it into an instrument. I want it to be something else. So here's just the bare minimum of what I need to do that. That's just the way I work. If I want it to be a sample that I'm manipulating that you hear, I cut up waveforms and just go that route. I go the old school surgeon route, cut, pitch, and away we go. However, what I like about Omnisphere is that its own library is extremely versatile and is a very good fit between the Kurzweils, the microchord, the Casio, the DX7. It is able to occupy a sonic space that doesn't overpower any of them and still cuts its own vein. And ultimately, when you're trying to pull sounds from your library in a song, you may want a sound that, is the drone that goes throughout the entire thing. So here's your bass line, your pads, or whatever. But a lot of times you want those details. And so you'll bring in a sound for a second. And, I'll use the other channels on the Kurzweils for this. I'll use the analogs for this. Hell, the Anyboard Tulip project that I've named is starting to do some heavy lifting now. And each one kind of has their own strengths. And that's kind of something that Vulture Culture talks about as well, where you start talking about hardware versus software synthesis. Yes, there is a lot of things that get super close. There are some that don't. What Omnisphere does well is being its own kind of thing. And I now kind of get why it's expensive, because they're not really trying to emulate anything else. What they're trying to do is their own form of synthesis using the synthesis that we know, including sampling. But no, I think they have proven themselves as their own instrument.
This is a good conversation. Thank you, Brad. Alex, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I probably have a really big overlap with what Brad just said. I think you should just use both depending on your mood. Working with them is probably something that's will push you towards different results, because I think a DAW sampler will make you use it more polyphonically, and I don't know how to say it. There's a certain way a certain direction it pushes you towards, and if you use a hardware sampler, I think it's more direct. And of course, you can do crazy stuff like sample Omnisphere in your hardware sampler and so on. So I think that's both not exactly the same thing. So you should use each for their strengths and what you're in the mood to use in the moment.
I appreciate this. Thank you very much. Razi, fill my brain with your wisdom. Slowly.
I don't think
Oh, yeah.
the end. Just don't. That making a decision based on whether something's hardware or software, I don't really do that. I mean, it's more of a pain in the ass if I have to boot it up. But as far as what sounds it makes, there's some hardware that makes the same sounds as some software, and vice versa. But what raises the question for me, as somebody who doesn't know, what's the headline feature for Omnisphere? What's its value proposition? Why does it exist? What does it try to solve? How does it fit into the world? And then on the creative side of that, what is the songwriting moment where you're motivated to reach for Omnisphere to solve something or to make something come true?
Please jump in.
I can give you my 2-minute version, which is very narrow because I've only just started using it, but it does have a lot of presets in there, and those presets remind me of wavetable synthesis, like the wave station, right? So, and there are multiple voices for different instruments. And what's interesting is I started sampling a compression cylinder. It's kind of like a piston, and it makes a really weird, eerie sound. And I used my phone to record the audio about 3 or 4 times just to try to get it right. And I loaded each of those samples into each of the voices of Omnisphere and started playing with that to create a kind of like a multi-voice or multi-polyphony instrument that I could then play with my MIDI controller. And so my objective is to play with the sampling capabilities and the synthesis capabilities, where you can pick any other voice and mangle that voice and layer it like additive synthesis, layer into those samples to come up with something different. And then you can kind of change the overall parameterization of that sound set, I would call it, multi-voice, save your own preset. And to me, it's good because I can, and this, I'm gonna diverge a tiny bit here. Gary Newman's latest documentary, you'll see him using Omnisphere on a big touch screen. And he talks about how he's looking for wild, wacky sounds. I think he mentions dragging a steel pipe across concrete and recording it, and then dumping it into Omnisphere and layering it with other things, and coming up with an oh shit moment where you've got this wild sound that nobody's ever heard before. And he says, where am I going to use this sound? Right? So he's on a sound safari. It's not creating a composition or a song. He's actively on a sound safari using Omnisphere, and he's coming up with presets to save. And it struck me as interesting the other night when Alex, he was creating sounds on the Therapsid, and he said, "Oh crap, I've got to save this preset. It sounds amazing, and I want to bounce this to Omnisphere and save it off as a reusable thing." To me, it's definitely creating a new sound, and it's very fast at creating a new sound. The interface is actually quite simple, and there is some randomness. So if you want to grab a glass of bourbon and kick back and keep pressing the random button for 20 minutes, you'll get tired of coming up with great ideas. It's kind of frustrating that way, because it is a good idea fairy. But to me, it's about getting something together that matches your style. I'm looking for sounds that match me and my sound as an artist. And then I save those off, and I can use them in a track later. And I want to play them. I want to play them with expression. I'm not programming them. I'm not running Omnisphere through the door. I'm not laying down MIDI notes in a door to drive Omnisphere. I could, and maybe Brett's got some words on that, but it's just one instance, right? I don't know if you can run it multiple instances. I've never used a DS. I've never used the VSTi in multiple instances. Actually, I've never used the VSTi of Omnisphere. I've only used the app. So I'll stop there.
Please keep going. I'm learning from this conversation. Ivan, thank you. And Bundy fucking rum all the way, mate. On your Rob. Bundy fucking rum. Best rum you'll ever have is Bundy rum and Bundy ginger beer. Ivan, hit me with your brain.
Yeah, I've got a couple of different ways to, turn things into samples. The expert sleepers can like wind through the notes and like just go across the whole spec, get every note from the source as a note instead of grabbing just one of them and converting that to a you know repitching it across the spectrum. And then I think the MPC-1 can do the same thing. And especially with the analog gear, being able to be get happy with something and then want to save it for the future, where like patch cables and getting everything just right again is surprisingly difficult. And then the Alita, you can just turn it off and turn it back on and it's going to sound different. So once it's in the magical place, I appreciate being able to preserve that for future use. As not being able to do that kind of can kind of suck upon occasion.
All right,
And
good to
the
know.
nice thing about having hardware is like I don't need anything else. It's working great.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Thanks. Rob, hit me.
I think you meant me. My name's Brett, by the way.
Oh, hi, Brett. It's just he's got alcohol, or he's got Bundy fucking ginger beer. I'm just going,
He's cuter.
gotta
Let's be
get
real.
some of that.
Nah. I've pretty much used it predominantly as a VST, Rob. And where Omnisphere won me is I used to use sound fonts almost exclusively for choirs. I found a few really good ones. I was able to, still am technically, but I would take they were very, very dry. That's just kind of one of their things. And so you'd have to kind of put them in an environment. And when on Vulture Culture, I saw Alex using Omnisphere for that, and he kicked up some of the choirs. That's when I realized that there was something better to accomplish that job. That was my intro into it. Since then, what it does really well is being able to blend sounds. And so you can start with, say, I'll use my own example, say a church choir. Blend that with, Tibetan throat singing, and then have this new sound that, it would be really difficult for a single human to do, or even, a choir without actually having those people who do that really well. And then, where you get into the sound design part of it, how quickly you can get from, okay, here's that, sweet spot to somewhere else. And the only other things that I have that compare to that range of being able to take a known into the unknown are the Kurzweils. And to do that same sort of thing, well, actually, you know what, I don't have one, but Carl could probably tell you about 10,000 ways to do that on an EMAX. And my point to it is that as a software platform, I think it is as close to the Kurzweils and these synths in terms of being able to manipulate sound as their hardware brethren. It is different in how it gets there, and that's okay because they're different in how they get there. And really, where I've used it the most, like I said, is choirs, but I've also used it for guitars. And there I've used it in guitars in very alien ways. Instead of playing it like a guitar, play it like a robot learning to play a guitar. That comes up with some unique sounds. In terms of its, out of the box synthesis, I found it to be able to do what sounds convincingly like everything from analog to any other form of synthesis, though I've not used it as much because I'm more comfortable with the other instruments. And, that's where, what Alex was saying, use what's comfortable, really kind of comes into play. I guess where I would put it is that for its price, it's probably one of the most powerful synthesizers you can get.
Booyah, baby. Thanks for that. I'm just going to do another round. Well, yeah, I'll jump in later. Just because I don't want to take it off the subject because this is a very important subject. I have a lot to learn about this. Razi, tell me more about the way that your brain works.
I think it sounds to me like I was waiting for somebody to say Kurzweil on the topic of Omnisphere. Thank you, Brett, for being the one that I expected to say Kurzweil in the topic of Omnisphere. So it sounds like a multi-engine, vast, loads sample libraries like sound fonts and lets you manipulate them as a synth engine with lots of effects and novel routing kind of jam box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is a soft. I mean, it would not have surprised me if Kurzweil had made the synth.
Cool. That sounds interesting. But does it tend toward the well, if it has a tendency, does it tend toward the higher fidelity, not gritty side of things, like a bit of a glossy synth, if it had a tendency?
I would say it reminds me more of the PC4 than it does the K2000. You know, where the K2000 brings a lot of those early characteristics, the PC4 brings a lot of polish.
Yeah.
This being, you know, something that can sample, you know, that realm. You know, if your sample contains that grittiness, it's gonna keep it, but its own synthesis engine is already, you know, up to modern standard.
I had a feeling it might be going that way, and it's possibly because I've just seen a lot of videos of it and I'm not thinking of them, and possibly just by the way that y'all are describing it. But Rob, I also wanted to mention I've seen Newman plunking around on that Slate Raven, and I think he might be the only person that got one and kept it and still uses it. If that's a recent example of somebody still using that thing, I don't know if there's any truth to it, but if you'd like to weigh in on whatever you are actually going to say, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that documentary is a few years old now, but it's probably still his go-to because you could see that it's in his workflow, like it's how he operates, you know. And I think that's cool. You know, this has all got me thinking about something. And Carl's conveniently disappeared. I know he'd have an opinion about this. If we have, there he is. If we have, are we missing something in the market? That's my question. Because I've heard Alex talk about the Prophet X. We've talked a little bit about the new Kurzweil that's coming out or come out. If you were to get the best of both worlds, you want that glossy, beautiful, lush synthesis and sampling capabilities, polyphonic, it's sampling still and modifying waveforms, right? It's not bit crunched, and the length of it with aftertouch is as long as you care to have the sample size, but you're going to combine it with the old analog amplification, filtering, ADSR, all of that fat goodness of the dark ages, you know, and putting those two together, I think, is a mystery bin to me. There probably is a couple of examples you guys are going to throw out and I'll go, oh yeah, you're right. But I'm kind of struggling to think, where do you find all of that in a box these days where you get the goodness of all the digital technology, plus you get the heartfelt rigor of the old analog electronics in the back end? Is that something that Carl's got? Is that something that somebody's been looking at on Reverb lately? Perhaps a little bit too much? I'd be interested to know people's thoughts on that.
Thank you very much. I would love to have this conversation. Alex, I want you to go first.
I think the world of Quantum, it does exactly that because it has analog filters, but you can also multi-sample, and I think you have like 3 possible layers of samples per voice.
Is that it? Is that all you're going to say? Well, that was good.
There's
That's
also
good.
the Prophet X, but I think both the Quantum and the Prophet X aren't in production right now.
Can you put a link to
Um,
this?
Does the
Is this-
Quantum Hamster have all of the analog goodness of like an early analog synthesizer in terms of
No, that's the quantum
amplification
gerbil.
and
well, I think Waldorf had this
gerbil?
thing where their analog circuits are very conservative in the way that they are not overdriving them too much, and it sounds very clean, but it's analog, and yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I may have told you this a few years ago. I was looking for this synth that was the grand motherfucking poobah of synthesizers, and I found it. And it wasn't by any brand name you've heard of. It's the sort of thing that Hans Zimmer has one, Vangelis had one, and it was like $5,000, I think, and it was this great big black fucking rack thing that was like 9 units high, but I didn't get it because, and I saved up the money and everything because, and this is so fucking lame, the labels were written in Comic Sans. And I just went, I'm not fucking doing it. And one of my reasons behind not doing it is that I researched the company and they've been around a while, and since they've disappeared. And if you're gonna buy this box, it had, I don't remember what the polyphony was, but it was like I'm doing sound design for a movie that's going to be an IMAX kind of thing. And it had the transform, multiply transform. It had all of that EMAX shit in it. And it was completely unheard of. And it came from a company, and I can't fucking remember what the hell it was called. It didn't have enough power, nous, etc. to survive. You know, what if I need a firmware backup update in 3 years' time? What happens when Windows goes into Windows 12 and it doesn't support it? So it's really fascinating how, and it is fascinating, fuck you, how the really edgy shit doesn't have the ability to update with time. Although I have an emulator 4 right in front of me that does a whole bunch of shit. Kurzweil's just bought out, and Kurzweil will be around for 10 years. I'm quite confident of that. Usually, if they will be updating their firmware or not, who knows? But the fucking the K260, 2061 and 2700, they're ridiculous. Like, what you can do with those synthesizers is nuts. But it's also like stuff that can get shit and collide the sounds together, like the transform multiply that the EMAX was doing. And also this the sound generating, the actual synthesis that the Fairlight was doing. Is there anything that actually does what a Fairlight? I'm sure there is. But
I mean, comes with a light pen and a page
yeah,
art.
yeah. Where you are creating a sound wave that isn't a 2-dimensional thing, but a 3-dimensional thing. Yeah, that's shit, man. That's nuts. So there you go. It's very fascinating that and it is fascinating when a synth company goes, oh, we're going to do this thing. Now you've made me paranoid. When a synth company goes, oh, we have to do this thing, but there are audience expectations that it has to fall within. I was having this conversation this week to somebody who does something else related to music. It's the ongoing conversation. It doesn't matter if it's opera. It doesn't matter what the fuck it is. The audience have an expectation of what it is, but the audience actually want to experiment as much as they possibly can. Like if you release something that's got this crazy acid trip whiz bang system and it is an option to go in there, most likely people are going to go in there. I haven't watched the new Gary Newman thing. I probably should. I don't want to because I'm scared. I'm scared it's going to make me feel like a loser. I just hate those fucking documentary things. Anyway, point being, I still haven't got so much shit out of the EMAX. While you guys were talking about this, I was thinking about how there are things that the EMAX does that I have not explored. And that might be because in order for it to do it, it has to calculate what it is, and it takes like 10 to 45 minutes to calculate it because it's got such a 1985 fucking processor on it. And I don't know of any other synths that do transform multiply like what the EMAX did. Blah, 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 blah. Remember that the fucking third wave took what the whole merging and wavetable merging bullshit that the PPG did it and made that way better. Where you could turn a sound that goes for 3 seconds into something that goes for like 3 days. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. It's just, and then there's granular, and then. Fuck, I give up. Somebody make sense of what I'm saying. Rob, make sense of what I'm saying right now.
There's so many different ways to solve or provide sampling capabilities that there's no standard. And I'm wondering if the DAW, which for 99.9% of users of a DAW, their idea of sampling is placing a wave file in the DAW and that's it. That's what they think it is. And does that drive the market's expectations that sampling is dead for hardware because it's always going to be in the DAW? Which, I know there's a lot of plugins that do fuckery on samples, but that's a lot to expect from somebody's computer that they've got the right way to capture a good sound somehow and then import it in, or they're just downloading it from an online library. I mean, if anyone had worked out how to do hardware sampling with really cool, great sampling features for modifying the original sample to a level of chaos that's extremely creative and combined all of the analog board level outputs for a grand performance instrument on a super stage, it would be Roland. You would think that Roland would have come out with something like that. And I had those false expectations when I looked at the System 8 and the System 1, honestly. And it's good that Ivan's disappeared because he'll hate me for this. He's coming back. The System 8 has the ability to emulate different synthesis models and different synthesizers. And I don't have the System 8, Ivan does. I've got the System 1, and what the System 1 does is really good, but I was disappointed with the hardware analog output side of it. It failed to meet my expectations of what would constitute a legendary synthesizer in Alex's terms. It just didn't do it. It was just a door in a box with knobs. Okay, cool. There's a lot of controllers out there that can connect to a DAW. So whether it's in the box or out of the box, I was looking for that lush analog performance out of the back 2 sockets. And that's really hard to find. Am I talking about something that's just too expensive that nobody's going to buy? Having multi-channel polyphonic aftertouch sampler with a Byzantine number of different distortion waveforms that you can modify samples with and have a beautiful lush back end for, wide, a really wide frequency response, if you like, for live performances. I don't know if it's out there. I mean, does Moog make something like that? Who's still making samplers in hardware that would create a monster mega machine that you would want to put on max volume in a, at Wembley?
Really good point. Thank you, Rob. Alex, tell me about your brain.
So if it doesn't have to be either analog or polyphonic, I think Electron makes really creative samplers. I use the Octatrack, which doesn't work like a sampler you play with the keyboard, but you have like a way to play different snippets on each TR style drum sequencer. So you can have longer samples and twist them, maybe change the pitch and modulate them in crazy ways. Or you can have like drum, similar to drum sounds, one-shot samples that are like triggered, and you can then work them in different ways. More similar to a keyboard sampler is the Digitech, because you have like a whole synth engine for each voice, but it's also mono. You can also sample with the rhythm, I think it's called, which has analog filters, but it's intended as a drum machine. I think you can play the samples chromatically, but you will have you only have one voice. Then they also have a thing that can play polyphonically. It's called Tonewerk, I think. But I don't know how mature the firmware is. I heard there's still some issues, but I think it's the only machine that can play polyphonically. Yeah, and if it doesn't have to be polyphonic, I think these are worth looking into, especially if you buy the older models, not the Mark IIs, but the Mark Is, because they have become quite affordable since the Mark IIs are out.
Thank you. We're really getting also into sound design territory here, like actual sound design territory. Fascinating. Bill, Brett, what do you think?
No, I'm still not Rob. Rob, I guess what you're stating here kind of makes me question why you want this to be one box. And my own thoughts to that are, the DAW, the Kurzweils, the most of your super synths out there, can be that thing you're talking about. But for me, and I think all of us, maybe to some extent, it seems like these same devices cause a bit of decision paralysis, slowing down the full adoption of them. Carl mentions that he's got so much more to learn about EMAX. Well, I've got more to learn about both of these guys than I care to admit as well. And and that's where I come down to, it's like, well, if it's going to be a single box, then maybe the DAW is the right answer, because then it's repeatable, reproducible quickly, and you can take a backup of the entire thing, including the sounds themselves, and then you start live wise talking about controller boards. So I kind of go, what is the end game, I guess, maybe.
So that you bring up a good point. What before we move on, I just want to point out something that should be obvious to everyone. If the latest Kurzweil or the latest Roland or the latest Moog is the penultimate level of technology for synthesizers in 2026, is the sampler equivalent a PC, or is it the Akai MPC? Because I'm going to be terribly disappointed if that's the truth. Taking a PC onto stage, no, I know everyone does it, but it's a terrible idea. And then taking an MPC into the studio to record, I'm pretty sure they're just concatenating samples from old LPs to make their rap albums. They're not actually doing amazing wave distortion or reprocessing apart from some effects. I'm failing to see where the EMAX and Kurzweil and Mirage are here today in today's current market. I don't see any equivalents. They might be there. They might be buried in a Yamaha Motive workstation. I know those are pretty amazing at doing sample fuckery, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm asking the honest question. has the market missed something here? And is the only answer PC based? Has everybody gone to an MPC one, or are they going to a computer? Which that's pretty disappointing, because if you've ever plugged in a Kurzweil or an EMAX into stage amplification and cranked it up so you can hear every single harmonic coming out of those multiple channels, those multiple outputs, I guarantee you there is not a single PC today that can do that. Not to that effect, not to bringing it in, plugging it into the stage amplification and shaking your world. I might be wrong. Tell me I'm misinformed, but I've never had an oh wow experience plugging a PC into stage amplification. Not like I do from playing an old analog synth, or a digital one for that matter. That's just my narrow-minded experience. I'll lay it out that way.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a good conversation. Nerves are being hit. I like this. My nerves are being hit, and I'm going to let you know. But first, here's Ivan.
Yeah, I mean, like you could, okay, if you're willing to actually blow a surprising amount of money, you could build that with Eurorack and like really fine tune your world so that like, you're playing those samples, as an instrument, in real time, in a way that, and you can even go polyphonic. I mean, if you're really, interested in like just going nuts, you can get polyphony out of Eurorack. Um, that takes a bunch of extra wiring and a whole lot of like scratching your head and screwing around, but you can get there. And they make sample playing cards, or modules that like each voice can be a dedicated sample player, and then like there'd be a variety of ways of making that seem like the real thing, like an EMAX without being one. So like, there's a way to do it. It's just kind of an ugly way. But I mean, you get all that like Eurorack processing analog warmth in the end, which would kind of make it worthwhile.
Thank you.
At one point, I was looking closely at building like an 8-voice poly sample player with Eurorack for those reasons.
Thank you. This is great, and I'm really grateful for this conversation. Oh boy, there's a lot I want to say here, and I think I will right now. So firstly, I want y'all to have a look at, and thanks for the comments, by the way. For $2.5 grand, you can get a Synclavia Regen. Because I was trying to think, what's the bee's fucking knees of synthesizer ever? And I came up with the Synclavia. So while everybody's been talking, and I'm thanking everyone so much for the conversation is insane, is I've been having a look online, asking the old fucking AI, and it keeps coming up with everything is software. And it's listing, besides the Kurzweil stuff, it's listing synths that are not really pushing the boundaries. They may have cool filters, they may have this, that, or the other. And really the Kurzweil stuff, it is about having cool filters. I totally agree with Rob, that it has moved away from the idea of a box or a keyboard that is absolutely pushing what samplers can do. And maybe like, sure, one argument is that, well, they're computers anyway, and here's your computer, so use your fucking computer and get a piece of software to do it for like $100, $300, as opposed to spending $5,000 on something that's a computer anyway, da 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 da. Some of us want to spend $5,000 on a computer. And it's just really interesting that there's nothing. I mean, everybody else, you're welcome. Ask your fucking AIs, ask your search engines, what are samplers or sound generating things that are really fucking pushing the boundaries. Yes, modular, absolutely. But I don't know, man. The craziest thing I could come up with was the Synclavia regen, which I'm of the impression didn't sell particularly well. Another one is the Steam Pipe, the Steam Hamster. That didn't sell very well either. Because it was too fucking weird, and you can get it as a software thing for $100 as opposed to sending. Yeah, fuck AI, but remember that the quickest way to find the information we're looking for is you're going to be using a search engine, and that's an AI. Yeah, you go. It's just really interesting. And then I harken back to Vulture Culture's video the other day that was saying how vintage synthesizers and samplers are retaining their value, and if anything, they're going up in value, probably more than your rent or property value, and also more than fucking certain security bonds are. Maybe it's because there is nothing around that fits that desire. And also, is it specifically a generational thing that people who got, when I was a kid, all I wanted was a fucking emulator 3 because they look so cool in that David Lee Roth video. You know, the one where he's got like 4 emulator 3s around him? It's the dope. So I want to get one now. Gee, I just don't know what I'm saying anymore. I've got to dig into the EMAX more. This is such a reminder that I'm so fucking lazy. I am resting on my laurels. I really fucking am. So please, go do this now. Everybody report, throw it in the chat. This is good. Alex, I want to hear your face.
So here's my perspective. If you want to have really bone-shattering sounds out of a computer, first you need an audio interface that's above a certain threshold of quality, because I feel like I don't want to name numbers, but I feel like there's a threshold where the sound has a certain quality that's like much more punchy and visceral than the stuff that's maybe a bit cheaper. I don't know what specs are responsible for that, but I feel like there's this line. But you don't need to spend thousands. If you buy a better beginner interface, by a brand with reputation, you will be fine. The next thing is modern DAW samplers have this thing where they push you towards layering. But if you want something that's like punchy and cuts through, you need one sound source that's really weighty. So don't layer up 5 different patches. Just use one really good software synthesizer with maybe 1 or 2 oscillators active at a time. Maybe a third one pitched down an octave. But don't go overboard with just hyper saws and stacked on top of choirs, and just focus on one sound that really works and try to write your patch in a way that makes this one sound work really well. Because I think like the more you stack on top of each other, the more you dilute the directness of this one sound. So it doesn't scale linearly better, but like there's a trade-off between complexity and punchiness. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Firstly, Rob, I want to pick up on what you said. I absolutely agree. If you plug a K2000 or an EMAX into a fucking PA, those machines were built for stadium rock, and you can fucking hear it. An EMAX through a stadium is obliterating. It's fucking crazy. Same with the K2000. They are the fucking tits. Secondly, Alex, you nailed it. That's maybe why I love the EMAX is it's one sound. I don't stack it up. It's one fucking sample. And, you know, I had the honor of at this show, blah, blah, blah. I met one of the guys from Skywalker Ranch. He was like one of the original guys. And I said, if you could give young sound engineers, sound designers, one piece of advice, what would it be? And he said, one sound. Don't layer it up. One fucking sound. So you're absolutely right, Alex. Just one fucking punch. Razi, rescue my brain.
Does anybody else have anything to say about the topic that we're already on before I shift it a tiny bit? Or may I?
No, dude, we're still going hardcore. Write it down. Don't forget.
Good.
I want to hear it.
I've got a little bit more, and I think Brett does too.
Yeah, go.
I'm gonna throw this. Yeah, I want to throw this to the Robinator. Then we're gonna fling back to the Resonator.
Yeah, so really, really good point, Alex. Audio interface, another piece of hardware, very expensive, potentially over $1,000 to get what you want. Is it giving you the dynamic range that you're looking for, or is it just giving you 192 kilohertz, 24-bit sound? I don't know if those are the same answer, to be honest. Because I'm looking for not a compressor, but a decompressor. I don't want to start with a 5-volt digital signal. I want analog to be coming out of a device through sampling and synthesis. I don't want to start with the constraints of computer technology as it is in a PC today. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I like your idea of adding a box though. And I think this is going back to the other week when Carl said, have a look around in your studio for that clapped out piece of gear that's got audio in. So maybe I need an audio interface that passes through the new stuff, through the old hardware to the PA. Maybe I need to plug Omnisphere through an interface box, export it into the back of an EMAX or a DSS-1 or and then crank the bejesus out of that and worry about what I'm going to do with that lush accoutrement after the fact, because either it's a live performance or I'm going to try to collect that goodness and compress it back into 5 volts. I don't want to do the latter. I'm actually interested in giving my whole body an orgasm through stimulation, giving the audience stimulation, right? So maybe the answer is to take box A and box B, where box A is the digital polyphonic aftertouch hamster, and then box B is the live performance bastard that's getting in everyone's face and shaking their jubblies. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe there's no new product that does that. Maybe that's the answer.
Thank you. Thank you. Brett, talk to me.
Rob, I think you can get close. I don't think you can truly get it down to one live box. And I will give you that. I've been the guy, you know, for a long time now, who will dump as much into the computer that runs the studio as any of my synths. It's gotta do everything they do plus some. To that regard, I've used things like M Audio's Delta 1010 LT cards to where I have a dedicated board within the box for handling sound versus letting its own onboard equipment average it. And to that regard, the one thing that I can say about a PC is that at least it is customizable to get you hardware components that start to do what you're talking about. you still have the software problem, and this is something we've both been talking about, offline, where you're dealing with like Commodore and I'm dealing with Amy board. And in exploring how to get from, say, a Juno 6 to like a Prophet, you start talking about different filters and whatnot. And yes, you can write something, digital, you can write a program that kind of does that, but you're not going to be able to emulate truly the physical filtering, which brings it back to you have to have some sort of hardware unit, right? And that's where I say if any device is going to get you closest to being that one point, it's going to be probably a PC platform. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're using it like a PC. It might boot up and straight up, I'm a hardware instrument at this point. It's more that you're taking advantage of the hardware components you can buy, strapping it to it, and kind of going from there. And I will say in my own use, when I ran the Delta 1010 board, I was competing right next to a Kurzweil K2000. So I know it works. I don't know what it sounds like in a stadium, but I know what it sounds like on two 500-watt PAs. And I was able to hold my own with that setup. So I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Alex, what are your thoughts?
If your goal is to remove the cleanliness from a digital sound source, I think those filter banks are really cool in that way because they are like distort the sound in interesting ways. There's the classic one by Sherman. And also, I think Erica Synth has one, and there's a really good video about it by a YouTuber called Red Means Recording. And I watched it, and it impressed me how raw it could make things sound. So maybe that's also an avenue to consider.
Thank you. Razi, do you want to jump in on this, or do you want to change this? Yeah,
no,
please.
I'm still on this. Rob, I think that what you're describing as elusive is truly elusive, but I really don't think that it has almost anything to do with what boxes where and what wires are where, and if there's a magical processor in the market or not. I think that is a really important threshold to have in your ears and in your heart and in your head. And I think that's where your uniqueness comes from as a maker of music. And I think that pursuit is essential to even being interested in doing this bullshit that we do. But I really don't think that, let me set it up as a dichotomy. Symphony orchestra in a room, there's 16 violins, and each of those goes through the air and hits your ear in a different way. And there legitimately are a unique event happening, and each section is in a different place in the room, and it's a large event, and there can be differences in how that hits you versus the whole thing coming through a pair of wires or a bit stream from the stage to the PA, to the mixer to the PA. This live situation that you're talking about, I really don't think that you need to worry about solving it with how it's crafted, whether it's compressed or decompressed or 2-bit fast versus 16-bit, 1-bit fast versus 16-bit parallel. Like, all of these things are fun to discuss, and they're academic, and they're part of the pursuit. But you, my friend, are looking for a sound and an inspiration that you can definitely get to 1,000 different ways, rather than worrying about which box it is and how it gets there, because of the constraint of rock and roll. And we're on the art of rock, not the art of chamber music. So this is coming through this live, insanely amazing event. One of my bandmates, J.O., always talked about being at one of the Providence clubs, and Keith Emerson showed up with his modular Moog and swept it down to DC in the room and didn't blow out the PA system or something fantastic. And it was like a spiritual event. But that was definitely the kind of thing that you could record, reproduce, and play back without Keith Emerson and his Moog modular in the room, and it would be identical. Mechanically, in the physical realm, identical, but without Keith and an 11-foot cabinet in there, and having never seen it before, and being maybe it was a sound check and nobody else was in the room. Those are the things that add up to that moment. The spiritual vigor of a rare instrument being played by a master is a different thing in rock and roll than it is in, say, classical symphonic orchestra, where the instruments are actually doing something in that room. You can't record it and have it come back physically identical to the event itself. But we're in rock, and these are events that have never existed beyond that for a live act PA system moment. And I think that there's a million ways you can do that without sweating whether it's turned into a 5-volt control signal ever or not. And that's just been a comfort to me. And maybe despite my confidence in saying it, I've got the same. I have no idea if any of this is true, because, you know, there's a lot of people that were really into putting a lot of speakers in the space and creating the same symphonic experience through having their individual instruments do not a combined PA system thing. But that's a different discussion that I think we're having. So that's about it. That's where I stand, land on it.
That's comforting. I think that is very comforting, and I appreciate your observation and your explanation. It's kind of tidied up the disaster zone when I threw the grenade into the room about, is there a box that's missing in the market? And I guess the answer is
you are the box.
Yeah, there you go.
The box is in your heart all along.
Yeah, to me, I know this is going to plague Carl for a little while still, but it's almost like what makes the Kurzweil K2000 and the EMU hot in terms of amplification and dynamic range compared to modern synths today, and how important is it in today's music, unless it's just live? Because I couldn't help but think, watching Gary Newman playing with Omnisphere, I couldn't help but think, he's got guys on stage playing synthesizers. So how does that happen? How does that work? And, you know, and you've got people out there who are doing this successfully today, right, in their rock bands with, you know, there might be a synth wave element where they're making it happen.
And for sure, sometimes it's disappointing when the genuine article isn't there. You know, he wrote that on a Polymoog, but they're showing up with a sampler synth and playing something else, and it's like, oh,
right,
huh.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm going to throw it to you, then I'm going to shoot my mouth off.
So I don't know what the current state of things is, but I've watched many behind the scenes live rig videos in my time, and I think the way people did it 10 years ago was one laptop with MainStage, which is like Apple's MIDI host, VST host program, and then they have one or two synthesizers that they play solos on. It's usually, or it was usually, Voyager rack that they had in their rack, and that was used for the lead sounds. And everything else where it needed a special sound, or maybe a special sound from the record, it was usually a multi-sampled instance of the synthesizer running as a VST or whatever the Apple equivalent is, AU, from a Mac Mini or something. I think that's the way people did it, and probably still do.
Thank you. For your horror, I just, in the Zoom chat, I put a Yellow Magic Orchestra stage plot in there. I do sound for bands live, and when I saw that, and I'm knee deep in synthesizers, and when I saw that, I went, oh my God, I can't. Alex, thanks, man. That was great. Here are my closing thoughts on this. They're not closing because I'm going to bring it up in 20 minutes anyway. I believe, Rob, I think you're right. The issue is the risk. We have lost, as a community of music makers, the risk of development. I think. Because what we're doing, we're doing basically Marvel Comics. We're buying stuff that is, and we're investing in stuff, technology that is already done and built and done and built. And it was done and built 20 years ago. I like your old stuff better than your new stuff. It fucking well is. When the DX7 first came out, which was completely and absolutely what the fuck, it changed the goddamn ball game. It really fucking did. It wasn't a sampler, because I can understand why people get all pissy over sampler, like excited, because there was the Mellotron, then there was the Fairlight, and the DX7 basically came out of nowhere, and it became the biggest selling synth of all time. And it took, for you to invest was it $3,000 when it first came out? $2 or $3 grand back in those days was a lot of fucking money. Was a tremendous risk. So musicians, not just pro musicians when there used to be pro musicians, but, people were investing in this thing for usually one or two sounds. And they were throwing out a whole bunch of money. When you look at the history of so many of these, and then there was the Mini Moog. Like it just came out of, well, it didn't really come out of nowhere, but it was a tremendous risk to get a Mini Moog. They sold quite a few of them. Same with the Prophet 5 and. A lot of these things were being built by people in their garage. Maybe not the DX7 though. And this is the thing about and I put in the Lyra, the Soma Lyra 8 in there because it's pretty fucking crazy as far as weird synths go. A lot of the synths that are being made are synths that are cutting edge. Larger corporations and larger businesses do not have the return on investment ability to create something fucking wacky. They don't. They're too busy building stuff that they know they are going to yield the money from. They cannot take a fucking risk because the audience, aka us synth buyers, are not taking the risks. So therefore, they're not building some fucking crazy fucking thing because they're not going to get the money back on the fabrication, the design, the research development, and. Yeah, that's, and if a synth or a modular, and that's the great thing about modular synths is that they are small companies. It is a horrifying overhead, but it's not that too horrifyingly overhead. Support the little guys. Just do it. It comes down to risk. And my argument that sort of fucks this whole thing is that we as the consumer have lost our ability to take risks. That's what I think. That's my observation, is that it is continually, basically everything has been done before. And if it hasn't been done before, they're trying it out. Oh, there he is. They're trying it out on software because software is easier to build now. But that's all I think. Razi, what do you reckon?
I think that conversation was really enlightening and ran its course, and I appreciate everybody's opinions there. So if you don't mind me asking, this is not unrelated. I think Ivan mentioned polyphony and modular. What's the actual thing you plug in to where to do polyphonic, like a polysynth style thing with your modular? I know you're gonna need, let's say, 16 voices or 8 voices or something, and a controller. What goes between them there? How do you do that? Anybody? I mean,
You could
has-
use
There is a
sub-
MIDI to
harmonica.
CV. There's a MIDI to CV controller that will handle that.
You can't do it with your single output of 5 volts per octave. That it's a
You could do subharmonic processing to break a single source into multi-channel. That's kind of giving it more voices. Not quite the same thing. I don't know if that's what you're asking for, but you're trying to take a single sound source and make it multi-channel.
It was more of, I'd like to hear how you would do whatever you want to answer it. Anybody who wants to answer, but no, my thought was getting a voice polyphony out of your modular, as opposed to playing it as a monophonic single voiced instrument, which I understand how to do. plug a control voltage into a VCO. I get that, but to do a polyphony split, so it'll do either priority or last or voice round robining or however it's achieved in regular synths. And
lots and lots of Euro modules.
I'm gonna throw it to Alex while Carl is deep in thought, since Alex is like grinning impishly and has his hand up and wants to jump in on this.
There is a polyphonic system by Döpfer, but I think nobody's actually buying it for that purpose because it's too expensive and too cumbersome. But you have discrete outputs for each voice. You then have to patch each cable for each voice into each oscillator into their own filter, each filter into their own how's it called, into their own VCA. And then I think there are even modules where you have controls for one envelope that gets split into different outputs. But even then you only get 4 voices unless you chain multiple of each. And I think nobody's actually doing that. What people are doing is, I think there are some modules that can produce polyphonic output via MIDI. And from that, people go into one filter, making it paraphonic. And I think that's the way people usually do it. One polyphonic source into a mono pipeline.
My money, I mean, I want to do it the hard way. What you just described is pretty much how I assumed it must be done. You've got a discrete voice mono chain for each event that comes out of the Döpfer as you press. I assume you need to start with a MIDI controller instead of a control voltage controller. That goes into
of course,
splitter,
of course.
and then you
could have like multiple ribbon controllers for each voice, and that probably would be very unique, and you would make records like nobody else. But it would also be really hard to master, I assume.
And probably hard to keep in tune, and probably keep the things aligned so that the
nice thing about ribbon controllers is that if there's no quantization, it can't be out of tune. You're the one putting it out of tune or in tune.
So the ribbon controllers go this way, I guess, so that you can actually get one finger per note. Now we're talking. So we've got 8 ribbon controllers, let's say, 8 VCOs, 8 envelopes for those, 8 filters, 8 envelope generators for the filters. And now, how much did I just spend? Well, how much? How plus a case and a power supply? $2, Carl? $2. That's reasonable. I would buy that for $2.
$2.
So good. Or are those dollar dues, or are they US
Erica
dollars?
does make something called Mutant Synth that will break out the signals from a MIDI source into separate discrete CV channels. But as soon as even after you've got like I said, this is something you do if you're interested in spending a lot of money, because you're essentially just building a synth voice, which is in and of itself a little expensive, but maybe probably not that expensive. And now you're multiplying it by how many poly you want to be, and then spending extra on the MIDI to CV controller. I mean, you are in fact going effing crazy at that point.
All right. So this is the most exciting thing I've heard about modular synthesis since we've been talking about it here. Essentially, I just described memory moog anyway, so whatever. Oh, man.
I suppose another way of doing it would be use VCV rack as your input, because VCV rack can just do that, and then have like an ES9 plugged in somewhere, and then output the CV signals after they've been split by Eurorack into the physical Eurorack, and now you can drag it back in and repair the whole mess as much as you'd like. Still, that gets really expensive really fast.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at like $500-600 a voice.
Right.
But if you're that crazy, which I used to be, then it sounds like a good idea, doesn't it?
It really does. It sounds beautiful. And I mean, honestly, it sounds like a pain in the dick, and keeping all of those things somewhat calibrated so that they're doing similar stuff is part of the goal of making it a polysynth and not just an experimental noisemaker. But you know, 4 voices, I could do that a couple of times a decade, setting that up to sound like play a chord with in tune. Thanks, guys. That's good information. Hey, Carl,
Well, I think the best
y'all
part
back
is
with
you
us?
could specifically choose which voice you want to detune.
Yeah.
There,
Thank you.
there is a simpler way into this, and the iPad Moog thing does track 4 fingers at a time with 4 voices just fine, in lieu of buying the modular version of this if you wanted to do it with ribbon style, or at least Buchla style touch controller with voice per finger. So just saying that exists.
Love it. You know what? That's a great place to say what a fantastic stream, and thank you all for being a part of this. Raziel, we're going to make a note about what you wanted to talk about. We're going to bring it up next week.
Oh, that was it. We hit it. That was it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thank you both. All of you, all 3, 4.
This has been amazing, and I'm really grateful for y'all's being a part of this. This is the Art of Rock, and we talk about all this shit every week on Saturday on Angelspit's Twitch and YouTube. Please follow that crap. This is made possible with Angelspit's friggin' Patreon. You can join it for free, or I could spend as little as $3 a month. And there's also the Bandcamp thing, but hey, and keep an eye on the Patreon because I'm uploading photos of this fucking photo shit, which is going to be awesome. We'll see you on Wednesday night with Vulture Culture doing a deep dive on synthesizers. Razi, thank you so much for fucking co-hosting this.
Great to be here. Thank you for having this show. It's a huge value. Love to do it.
Alex, thank you for your bloody input. That's Alex's music. And Brett, thank you for your music. That's your music. And we were joined also by Rob. This is Rob's Patreon. And also by the amazing Ivan. Thank you for your music, Mr. Ivan. And your brain and everybody's brains. We are now going to raid on over to MTV TV. So please, Diana, let's get that raid going. And thank you all for being a part of this. This has been really good fun, and my brain is melting. Let me know when we have raided. And wow, just too many brain
Rated.
Rated.
Fantastic. See you Wednesday night at Vulture Culture, or see you next week at Art of Rock.